The storm had been raging for hours. Rain slashed through the pine forest like shards of glass, and thunder rolled through the mountains, echoing across the valley below. Ethan Carter tightened his worn leather jacket as he trudged through the mud-soaked trail, flashlight trembling in his hand. He wasn't supposed to be out this late, but something about the wilderness always called to him when the world went silent. Ethan had lived alone at the edge of Willow Creek Forest for nearly 3 years. A wildlife photographer by passion and a quiet soul by nature, he preferred the company of trees and wind over people. The world had disappointed him too many times, promises broken, friends gone, love lost. Out here, in the wild, things made sense. The river never lied, the wind never betrayed, and the animals only took what they needed. But tonight felt different. The forest wasn't silent. A faint cry pierced through the storm, a sound so small, yet so desperate that Ethan froze mid-step. It wasn't human. It was sharper, almost like a kitten's whimper, but wild, haunting, trembling with pain. "Hello!" Ethan called out, his voice nearly drowned by the wind. He swept his flashlight across the undergrowth, the beam cutting through sheets of rain. The cry came again, softer now. He followed it, stumbling through the mud until he found the source, a tiny, trembling bundle of reddish fur tangled in a snare trap near a fallen log. It was a fox kit, barely a few months old. Her leg was caught in the wire, blood trickling down onto the wet leaves. Her wide amber eyes stared up at him, terrified, pleading, and wild. "Easy, easy there," Ethan murmured, crouching low. He reached slowly into his backpack, pulling out a pair of pliers and a small first aid kit. "I've got you, little one. Just hold still." The kit flinched, baring her tiny teeth in fear. Ethan's heart ached. He knew that look. It was the same look he'd had the day his father died, the day the world stopped feeling safe. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. It took him 10 minutes to free her. The wire had bitten deep, but she was still alive. As he wrapped her wound with gauze, she whimpered once, then fell limp from exhaustion. Ethan lifted her gently, cradling her against his chest. She was so light, so fragile that it felt like holding a piece of the storm itself. The trail back to his cabin was long and slippery. Twice he almost fell, but he didn't loosen his grip. When he finally reached home, the wind howled like something ancient and angry outside, but the inside of his cabin was warm, lit by the soft glow of the fireplace. He laid the little fox kit on an old towel near the hearth. Her fur steamed as it dried, her chest rising and falling weakly. Ethan sat beside her, his eyes softening. "What am I gonna do with you?" he murmured with a faint smile. "You're not exactly a houseguest, are you?" He poured a bowl of warm milk and dipped his fingers into it, letting her lick a few drops. For the first time, her tail twitched, just barely, but enough to make him chuckle. "You're a fighter," he said quietly. "Guess I should call you Luna. You look like a little moonbeam." Luna. The name felt right. He stayed up the whole night watching her breathe. Outside, the rain slowed to a whisper, and a strange calm settled over the forest. For the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel alone. But somewhere deep in the woods, unseen beneath the dripping trees, another pair of eyes was watching. Golden, sharp, and filled with fury. The mother fox had returned to an empty den. She had found her kit's scent on the trail, mixed with the smell of man. And she would not rest until she found who had taken her child. Morning sunlight crept through the cabin window, painting golden stripes across the wooden floor. The rain had stopped, leaving behind the crisp scent of pine and damp earth. Ethan stirred from the couch, his neck stiff from sleeping upright. The fire had gone cold during the night, but the faint sound of movement near the hearth made him open his eyes. Luna was awake. She sat up on her little towel, her fur fluffed out like a copper cloud. Her amber eyes darted around the room, cautious but curious. When she noticed Ethan watching, she froze, ears twitching nervously. "Hey there, little moonbeam," he said softly, keeping his voice calm. "You made it through the night." Ethan reached for the bowl of milk he'd left by her side and gently pushed it closer. Luna sniffed it, then began to lap at the surface with quick, shy movements. Watching her eat felt strangely rewarding, like witnessing life decide to stay. Ethan leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "You've got spirit. I like that." For the next few days, his cabin turned into a small sanctuary. Luna's leg healed slowly, and she grew more comfortable around him. She began to follow him with her eyes whenever he moved about. Sometimes, when he sat by the window sketching or sorting his camera gear, he'd feel a gentle tug at his shoelace, Luna playing. He laughed for the first time in months. Each evening, he'd take her outside for a few minutes, letting her explore the clearing near the cabin. The forest was vibrant after the storm, moss glistened, mushrooms bloomed, and birds called through the mist. Luna would sniff everything, her nose twitching like a compass to a world only she could sense. But Ethan noticed something else, too. At the edge of the woods, sometimes he'd see movement, a flicker of red fur, a shadow slipping between the trees. The mother fox. Always distant, always watching. He knew it was her. She never came close, never made a sound, but he could feel her presence like a pulse in the air. Luna would sometimes pause mid-play, lift her head, and stare in that direction with her ears perked. "You can feel her, Ethan murmured one evening as the sun bled orange across the sky. "Your mom's out there. Don't worry, she's keeping an eye on you." He wondered if he was keeping the kit too long. Maybe it was time to let her go. But every time he looked at Luna, still limping slightly, still trusting him with those wide, innocent eyes, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He'd lost too many things in life. He wasn't ready to lose her too. One afternoon, he took his camera out and started filming her antics. She'd learned to chase leaves, leap at shadows, and occasionally curl up in his lap as if she owned the place. He posted a short clip online, not expecting much, just a record of a quiet life. But within a week, the video spread. People commented on the bond between man and wild creature, calling it the most peaceful friendship ever. Ethan didn't care for the attention. He only cared about Luna. At night, though, the forest felt different. The air grew heavy, the silence sharper. Sometimes, he'd hear rustling near the cabin, too large for squirrels, too rhythmic for the wind. Once, he caught a glimpse of eyes glowing in the dark, watching him through the trees. He told himself it was the mother fox, just making sure her baby was safe. But there was something deeper in those eyes, intelligence, almost human. On the fifth night, Luna woke him with a sharp yelp. She stood by the window, fur bristling, staring into the black forest. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and looked outside, but saw nothing except mist curling around the tree line. "It's okay," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "You're safe. I promise." The words hung in the air longer than they should have, as if the forest itself was listening. The next morning, Ethan decided to take Luna farther into the woods for a small walk, hoping to find signs of her den. Maybe, just maybe, her mother would show herself. He followed the familiar trail, camera slung around his neck, Luna trotting beside him with her little limp barely noticeable now. They walked for hours. The forest grew thicker, older, quieter. Sunlight filtered through ancient branches in golden streaks. Then, suddenly, Luna stopped. Her ears flattened. A soft growl rippled from her tiny chest. Ethan crouched beside her. "What is it?" He heard it then, the faintest rustle behind them. He turned, heart racing. A shape emerged from the ferns, low, sleek, and graceful. A full-grown vixen, her fur gleaming like fire in the morning light. Her eyes locked onto Ethan, golden, sharp, unblinking. The air between them thickened. "Her mother," Ethan whispered. The vixen didn't move closer. She simply stood there, her gaze shifting from Luna to him, then back again. Luna whimpered softly, stepping forward. The mother fox tilted her head, almost as if torn between gratitude and suspicion. Ethan slowly placed Luna on the ground. "Go on," he said gently. "She's waiting for you." But Luna hesitated. She looked up at him, then back at her mother. Her tail flicked once, indecisive. The vixen made a low, throaty sound, something between a growl and a call. Luna stepped toward her but stopped halfway. Then, Just as Ethan thought the reunion would happen, the mother fox turned and vanished into the trees, silent as smoke. Luna barked once, confused. Ethan exhaled, his breath shaky. "Guess she's not ready yet," he muttered. They walked home slowly. But as they reached the clearing near the cabin, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was following them, not in anger, but in curiosity. That night, while he sat by the fire with Luna sleeping in his lap, the window creaked slightly open with a gust of wind. Outside, two golden eyes glowed again in the darkness, closer this time, almost human in shape. And for the first time, Ethan wondered if the fox's story was more than just animal instinct. They hovered at the edge of the clearing, silent and unblinking, shimmering in the moonlight like burning coals. Ethan could sense them before he even saw them, an invisible pull, a presence heavy enough to make his skin prickle. Luna would always wake at the same time, ears twitching, tail tucked close to her body. But she didn't seem afraid anymore. Instead, she would watch the window calmly, as if waiting for something, or someone. Ethan began to leave scraps of food near the tree line, bits of chicken, berries, and bread. Each morning, they were gone. He told himself it was just nature's way of keeping balance. But deep down, he knew the mother fox was accepting his offerings. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He needed to see her properly. The forest shimmered with dew when he stepped outside. Moonlight poured down through the branches, painting the world in silver. He carried no flashlight this time, only his camera and a quiet determination. Behind him, Luna whimpered softly, wanting to follow, but he gestured for her to stay. "I'll be back soon, little moonbeam," he whispered. The moment he crossed into the shadows of the trees, the forest changed. Every sound seemed amplified, the rustle of leaves, the heartbeat in his chest, even the whisper of his breath. He followed the faint crunch of paws on wet soil, moving deeper until the world seemed to hold its breath. Then he saw her. The vixen stood in a clearing bathed in pale moonlight, her fur glowing like flame. Her eyes caught his, and the world seemed to freeze. For a heartbeat, Ethan forgot to breathe. There was power in that gaze, something more than animal instinct, something ancient and knowing. He slowly lifted his camera, but before he could press the shutter, the fox spoke. Not with sound, but with thought. "Why have you taken my child?" Ethan staggered back, the camera slipping from his hands and landing softly in the grass. What?" His voice trembled. "Who's there?" "I am her mother," the voice came again, calm, feminine, echoing inside his mind. "The one you call Luna is mine." He blinked hard, certain he was dreaming. This isn't real. You're an animal. Foxes don't." "Do not call me that," she interrupted, her tone sharp as glass. "I am not as you think. I am one of the old ones, the keepers of the wild. You took her from the snare of death, and for that, I owe you life. But the bond between you and her has changed the forest's balance." Ethan's knees nearly gave way. "I was just helping her. She was dying." The vixen stepped closer. Her eyes softened, and her shape began to blur, melting into the moonlight. The air around her shimmered like heat on desert sand. Ethan's breath caught as the outline of the fox stretched upward, limbs forming, fur fading, eyes glowing brighter. When the light dimmed, a woman stood before him. She was tall, her skin pale as dawn, her hair the color of autumn leaves. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark. She wore a cloak of soft fur, and the wind seemed to move with her. Ethan could only stare. "You're her mother?" The woman nodded. "Yes. You may call me Soraya." He tried to speak but couldn't. His mind spun between disbelief and awe. She was both fox and woman, wildness given human form. She took a step closer, and Ethan felt warmth radiating from her, like standing beside the fire. "You have a kind heart," Soraya said softly. "Few humans would have saved a creature not their own. But in doing so, you've bound her spirit to yours. She sees you not as a stranger, but as family." Ethan swallowed. "Then, should I return her to you?" Soraya's expression flickered, sorrow passing through her golden eyes. "She belongs to both worlds now. The wild calls her, but so does the heart that saved her. To tear her from you would harm her spirit. Ethan looked down, unsure how to respond. Then what am I supposed to do? Protect her. Teach her what kindness means. And remember this, every act of love changes the shape of fate. Her words hung in the air like mist. Then she turned to leave, her form already beginning to fade back into the fox. But before she disappeared into the trees, she glanced over her shoulder, her voice a whisper that brushed against his thoughts. There will come a night when the moon bleeds red. On that night, our paths will cross again, and the bond between us will no longer be one of gratitude, but of destiny. And then she was gone. Ethan stood in the empty clearing, heart pounding, his mind spinning with what he had seen. When he finally returned to the cabin, Luna was waiting by the door. She nuzzled his leg, and he knelt down, holding her close. It was real, he whispered. She's real. Luna looked up at him with those same golden eyes, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan thought he saw something ancient flicker within them, a spark of her mother's spirit. Days passed, and life slowly settled into rhythm again. But Ethan couldn't shake the memory of Soraya, the voice in his head, the shimmer of her transformation, the strange calm she brought with her presence. Every time he looked at Luna, he was reminded of her. The fox kit grew stronger, more graceful, and sometimes when she played in the sunlight, he could almost swear he saw a faint glow around her fur. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and the sky turned crimson, Ethan noticed the moon rising, a deep, eerie shade of red. His heart stopped. The night Soraya had spoken of had come. And somewhere in the forest, a familiar voice whispered again, this time not with warning, but with longing. Ethan Carter, it is time. The forest was silent that night. Not peaceful, silent. Ethan stood on the porch, watching the red moon rise above the treetops. Its light painted everything in shades of crimson, washing over the cabin, the clearing, and the sleeping world beyond. Luna stirred restlessly inside, whining softly, as if the moon itself whispered her name. He could feel it too. Something ancient was waking. He slipped on his jacket, heart thudding, and stepped into the cool night. The air shimmered faintly, thick with energy. Every sound, every breath, felt amplified. Somewhere, deep in the forest, a faint melody floated through the air, like wind chimes carried on a dream. He followed it. The path was familiar but strange under the red glow. Shadows danced between the trees, and the ground pulsed with a faint golden light, as though the forest was alive, watching him walk deeper and deeper toward its heart. At last, he came to the clearing where he had first seen Soraya. But it was no longer a clearing, it was a circle of silver fire. And in its center stood the woman he'd seen that night, radiant as the moon itself. Soraya. Her eyes gleamed brighter than before, her hair flowing like a river of flame. The air around her shimmered, bending the light, and the trees seemed to bow toward her. Luna darted from the shadows and ran straight into her mother's arms, now human arms. Soraya knelt, cradling her daughter close, whispering words too soft to be heard. When she looked up at Ethan, her gaze softened. "You came," she said, her voice echoing like wind through crystal. "How could I not?" Ethan whispered, stepping closer. "You called me." Soraya smiled faintly. "The forest called you." I merely answered. He swallowed hard, unable to hide the awe in his voice. "What is this? What's happening to the moon?" "It is the blood moon," she said. "The night when the barrier between worlds fades. When the spirits of the wild and the hearts of men can meet without fear." She rose gracefully, still holding Luna close. "You changed the course of fate, Ethan Carter. When you saved my child, you wove yourself into the fabric of our world. Now, the forest itself recognizes you." "I didn't mean to," he said quietly. "I just couldn't let her die." "And that," Soraya said, stepping closer, "is why I am here." Her golden eyes shimmered with warmth, but beneath it, there was something else, longing. "I have watched men for centuries. Most see the wild as something to conquer, to own, to break. But you saw it as something to protect. You gave without asking. You loved without needing to possess. Ethan felt his chest tighten. I just did what was right. Perhaps, she said softly, but rightness is rare. Kindness rarer still. She took another step closer, and the air between them seemed to hum. The glow of the moon grew brighter, wrapping them both in red-gold light. Ethan could smell pine and rain and something else, something like foxfire and roses. Soraya, he said, voice trembling, why do I feel like I've known you forever? She smiled. Because the souls that are bound by fate recognize each other before the mind can. Her hand rose, brushing against his cheek, warm, alive, real. The touch sent a shock through him, like lightning laced with peace. When I first saw you, she whispered, I thought you were like all others. But you carried the forest's silence in your heart. You understood the language of solitude. You belong to this place, Ethan Carter, as much as I do. He shook his head slightly. You're not human. You live in another world. I can't. Her voice was gentle but firm. You can. The forest has chosen you. And I have chosen you. The words hung between them like a vow. Ethan's heart pounded. He looked at her, truly looked, and realized the truth. Her beauty wasn't what drew him. It was the sense of belonging she carried, the way she moved like the wind, the way her gaze made the world quiet. She was everything he had ever sought in solitude, peace, wildness, and purpose. The blood moonlight deepened. The clearing began to pulse with energy. The trees whispered in languages older than time. Luna pressed against her mother's leg, watching silently, as if she understood what was about to happen. Soraya stepped closer still, her hand slipping into his. In my world, she said softly, there are bonds deeper than marriage, vows that bind souls beyond death. You saved what was dearest to me. Now I offer what is dearest to you, a place where you will never be alone again. Ethan's breath caught. You mean? She nodded. I ask you to walk beside me. Between the worlds. As my equal, my partner, my heart. He hesitated, not out of fear, but awe. And if I say yes? Soraya smiled, her eyes glowing like dawn through mist. Then you will never grow old. You will live as guardian of the forest. The wild will know your name, and the wind will carry your voice. You will belong, forever. For a long moment, the only sound was the rustle of leaves and the soft pulse of the moonlight around them. Ethan thought of his cabin, his empty life, the loneliness that had clung to him for years. And then he looked at Luna, alive, safe, and glowing with innocence, and at her mother, whose golden eyes held both the wilderness and warmth he had been missing all along. He took a deep breath. And smiled. I think, he said quietly, I already belong to you. Soraya's expression softened into something beyond joy, something eternal. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. The moon flared, flooding the clearing with blinding light. When the glow faded, the night was still. The red hue of the moon softened into silver. The clearing was empty, no sign of Ethan, no sign of the woman, only a faint circle of glowing footprints in the grass. Luna sat quietly in the center, gazing up at the fading moon. Then, slowly, she turned and trotted toward the forest, her tail glimmering faintly like a thread of light. And if you stood very still, in that clearing beneath the moonlight, you might hear a whisper carried by the wind, a man's laughter, soft and free, echoing between the trees. He had rescued a lost fox kit. And in doing so, found the love of a wild, immortal heart.